This video is brought to you by Game Maker, the free, fast, and easy-to-use 2D game engine that helps power modern classics like Undertale, Hotline Miami, and Hyper Light Drifter. Starter templates, official asset bundles, and a wealth of tutorials are available to help bring your ideas to life. And you can export and share your game for free on all non-console platforms. But you don't have to take my word for it, I'm just some jerk. We have an actual bona fide Game Maker on hand.
Oh shit, that's me. Yes, I've been using Game Maker for a long time. It's probably the most powerful and easiest to use engine for making 2D games out there, suitable for both amateurs and hardcore coders, and with all the Steam and console integration stuff for when you're ready to start monetizing your hobbies. I used it to make my recently released game, Starstruck Vagabond, which has already delighted thousands of sci-fi cozy game aficionados, thanks to Game Maker being so bloody great.
Head on over to the Game Maker link in the description to begin your game development journey today.
Hello everyone, welcome to the Windbreakers podcast. I'm Yahtzee. I'm joined by Jay and Marty. Typical opening. And this week it's Marty's idea for the topic, which was in defense of Jank in games. And you said you wanted to define Jank before we pressed on, so please, by all means.
No. I said I wanted to try to define Jank, because to me, Jank is like porno, where I don't know how to define it, but I know it when I see it. But Jay, you I don't want to say you have more. You probably have more experience in describing Jank, in living in the Jank.
I guess.
How would you describe Jank to folks?
I think rather fittingly, Jank is something that is inherently jank to define. Like, it's something that you see. It's something where there's an issue with a product, I guess. It's something that's wrong with the thing. So in our terms, it's games. There is maybe a visual glitch or something with the audio, but it's not like game breaking. It's just, I guess for me, it's quaint. It's like a bit of jank is that it's a bit difficult to use, or something's breaking, but in a way that doesn't break the game for you. It's just like a quaint, obtuse. You know,
it's not quite the same as being buggy. It's something going wrong in a way that one finds weirdly endearing.
Yeah.
So does that mean that a thing being jank and buggy is purely the difference between jank and buggy is purely in the eye of the beholder?
Yeah, I think so.
Like we call things janky instead of buggy because we come at them with, a little bit of reverence, maybe because of the developer behind it, or because a team was small, or circumstances, or a franchise. Whereas if it happens in a Ubisoft game, Ubisoft is incapable of jank. That's bugs. It's a topic that I do find interesting.
Yeah.
In my mind, it's kind of like it's just jank bugs. It's when you start seeing the math behind the scenes, when you are taken out of experience because you start being like, oh, video games are just made of ones and twos and held together by fucking spit.
I suppose specifically jank is sort of flaws in the context of the developers having overlooked something or not having as many resources as you could have liked, which is why we don't really say AAA games are janky. For me, I don't know if I can define what jank is, but I can define what it isn't.
Okay.
And what it isn't is when a game feels polished. And when a game feels overly polished, that's something that I tend not to like.
Okay. You don't like those corners being rounded off. You like a little bit of sharp jank edge.
I don't like a game that restricts your movement with invisible walls, because if you walked on top of all the bits of furniture and stuff, then you would experience something. You would see something janky.
Okay, so you're talking kind of like Sony first-party games, which I don't think anyone would argue are not very polished, but there's no jank in a lot of them because of that restricted nature.
Yeah, it's sort of campness, sort of where the player's freedom allows them to create scenarios that the game wasn't really prepared for, like jumping on top of people's heads during Half-Life cutscenes. It feels jank, but it's fun.
Mhm.
Yeah, and I guess that's like the difference between player-driven jank, which I agree, Yahtzee. I think that should be something that should be embraced. We kind of, when you do that as a player, you kind of understand that you were doing something that wasn't intended, and you, in a way, are expecting the jank, and it's kind of like a reward. But there's also the jank you feel like seeing a cutscene and then randomly an NPC in the background goes into T pose or A pose for a split second and then goes back to their animation. That always gets a laugh out of me. Like, yeah, that shouldn't be happening. It's an animation mistake, but it reminds me. I love it.
Let's go to some specifics, because the one thing that leaps to my mind when you mentioned that is when I was first playing Assassin's Creed Unity, which was notoriously buggy when it first came out.
Yeah.
And when I was playing it initially on PC, it had this issue where it would just like freeze for like a second every few seconds, and then when it unfroze, all the physics would sort of all the stuff that had queued up during the pause would happen at once.
Oh,
so I've been watching a cutscene with a bunch of noble, dignified assassins talking to each other, and then every few seconds it would freeze for a second, and then all the tops of their hoods would just go whoop, just go whoop like that.
Oh my god, I love that.
Yeah, so I was about to say, was that janky in a charming way or buggy in an annoying way?
Well, it was annoying in gameplay. I eventually sort of caved and bought the PlayStation version.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't have to put up with it. But in the cutscenes, it made me laugh.
Mm-hmm.
And, I always appreciate things like that because it makes you go, oh, no, game's trying so hard. Oh. And it gives you a positive feeling towards the game.
Yeah. And there's carry on, Mike. Oh,
no, I was no. Continue with that because I was kind of rail us down a different track.
Well, let's get
I was also going to do that.
Well, let's talk about more specific examples, because there's the three-pronged hydra that brought this topic up was Stalker 2, which I think we've all been playing a little bit, which that's its own criteria of jank.
Its own breed of jank.
It is.
Yeah. Stalker 2, which of course was people were complaining about on launch because it wasn't properly QA'd. Also, you and I, Marty, have been playing Slitterhead lately, which is a game remarkably old school in its sensibilities, including jank.
Yeah. Oh, it's very janky,
of course,
is it?
Oh, yeah.
And of course, today's Battle Masters, in which Jermaine got a face full of the worst kind of jank, trying to get the bloody game running.
4 versions of the game I had to buy. 4.
But then when you see that horse wiling out, that's good jank. That's the good jank.
Yeah, no.
The game not working is the bad jank.
Okay. The good jank is initially loading in and going, ha ha ha, horse spin, and then that happening for half an hour straight, trying to troubleshoot why it's happening and not being able to do anything. That's bad. Yeah. That's buggy. Bad.
Yeah, in the AAA realm, I think Bethesda's probably the developer who people's minds go to immediately, and I feel like they have ridden the spectrum of jank to where at a certain point, maybe when they were considered more like underdogs, the jank was very charming, and now that they not only purchased a shit ton of companies under them, but then got purchased by one of the biggest companies in the world in Microsoft, now the jank is like, how dare you? How dare you have a box act weird in Starfield?
That's not endearing, jank. Because as I say, the jank is something that I feel like we miss so much these days because the AAA games tend to be overly polished. And if there is jank, it's just the annoying kind.
I feel like if it impedes gameplay, it strides the line of not being jank anymore and becomes buggy and annoying. Like you said, Yahtzee, with Unity, once it started impeding gameplay, you had to go buy another version of the game. That is just terrible. Yes. That's really bad.
Yeah, if you lose progress, if you need to go back to an older save, if you're having hard crashes, those are indefensible janks in my mind. Those are not. No one can find those endearing. Where a character whiling out in the background, or physics getting wonky for a bit.
But would you rather have jank in all its wonderful spectrum of jankiness, or games that just restrict what the player can do half the time in order to avoid jank?
So I mean, this centers around something you bring up a lot, where you'd rather have a bad game than a bland game, right? And some of that jank can, if the jank is a product of a developer's creative reach extending their practical grasp, then I think that's something that you could be like, ooh, I see what you tried to do here. And it was actually like a pretty neat idea. But because of time, because of resources, because maybe you were just a little too early to the idea, this thing does not feel great. And I feel like I'm much happier giving that a pass.
Shall we talk about Slitterhead?
I would love to talk about Slitterhead.
Yeah, fill me in.
I am writing a review that's going to come out, but I don't want to spoil myself here.
Sure.
But Slitterhead's main mechanic is possession. It is a possessor up.
Mm-hmm.
One of the few
Possessor
ups. Yeah. I think the only two possessor ups I can think of are Messiah and Driver San Francisco. And I love
San Francisco.
Possessing things in Driver San Francisco.
Yeah,
me too. I love that game.
Second Sight was a good possess 'em up back in the day.
Was it?
Wasn't Second Sight Psyops? Were those possess 'em ups? Geist? No, I'm thinking of Geist. Geist was a possess 'em up in the game.
That was a Geist 'em up.
Well, I don't remember that one. But I really enjoyed how the possessing in Driver San Francisco allowed you to not skip a beat in the gameplay. So it was a driving game. So if you could drive into a wall, and usually that would mean, the flow has been lost. Now I have to reverse out, rejoin traffic, and I've lost however much distance on the person I'm pursuing. Not in Driver San Francisco. Just hop out, possess the next dude on the road, and get right back into the action. That's what I loved about it.
What a weird premise. I love that game.
That's sort of the experience I get in Slitterhead combat as well. Things going wrong? Not anymore.
So you switch between bodies.
Right? That's not me. Yeah, so you have like core characters. You can bring up to 2 core characters into a mission, and they are like characters are upgrading and stuff, story characters. But then you can possess just random NPCs wandering around the city. So when you get into a battle, you have your 2 core characters, but you can also possess an NPC who's cowering in fear behind the monster, and you'll possess them, and they'll have some abilities and weapons, and they won't be as strong as your core characters, but you can use them in combat, use them in traversal. You can jump off a roof, and right before you're about to hit the ground, just possess someone else, and then you're like, I don't know what happened to that guy. He just jumped off the roof. That wasn't me.
Oh, that's awesome.
I guess the jank running through possessor modes for me is sort of context-based. Because, morally, this is completely indefensible.
Sure.
We're just, leaving a prolonged sequence of dudes to die.
Yeah, we're taking over their bodies without consent. It's pretty fucked up, yeah.
But the plot, like Driver San Francisco particularly, sort of necessarily has to frame us as the good guy, and it really doesn't come across in, the actual... It's a bit of ludonarrative dissonance, I think, that particular flavor of jank.
Yeah, I compared Slitterhead to a lot of games of the PS3 era that it felt like a lot of the we're trying to do a AAA thing, but we might not have the AAA resources, and that's where you get the jank of your Vampire Reigns and your Nine Jacks.
Platinum games kind of touch that realm for me, like a lot of Platinum games.
Yeah, there's certain developers that have like a jank, like Suda has a little bit of jank around him. Swery has a little.
Kamiya.
But that's good jank, I think. And then of course, you rise.
It's good jank. A good jank comes out of an experimental spirit, and for me, Slitterhead more embodies the more experimental spirit of the PS2 era, where there was a lower barrier to entry, there was much more better third-party support, so there were all kinds. People were experimenting with all kinds of crazy ideas. We were still somewhat new to the realms of 3D gameplay.
Yeah.
So you'd be more likely to see fun stuff like God Hand, Katamari Damacy. Shadow of the Colossus, really exploring the potential in the game space that you don't get so much these days. Now that everything's invisible walls and ultra realistic buckets.
Shadow of the Colossus is one of my favorite games of all time, and I think that is undeniably janky because it is trying something that barely any games are trying now. The scale and scope and freedom of movement and climbing up a thing's grundle. Even when I play that game now, I'm like, where am I? You get stuck in the fur and you don't know which way you're facing.
I think it strides this line between exactly what Yachts was saying with experimental, but also ambition. How ambitious the project is, what they're trying to do. It might be something that's been done before, but just on a completely different scale, like with Shadow of the Colossus. But that also is directly correlated to budget. If you're trying to do something incredibly ambitious with a huge budget, I think you push through that jank barrier and just get into you guys weren't managing your resources correctly. Like you had an infinite amount of money and you just fucked up, rather than you're a small team trying to do this ambitious thing and it's a bit jank. You know, it's such a weird line you can push through.
Do you guys have do you have early memories of janky games? Like, it's funny for me, like there's some 2D games, but I feel like jank is an inherently 3D thing. And maybe that's just because so many more like possibilities get introduced in a 3D game than in a 2D game.
As we say, it feels like jank is a result of ambition and exploring new spaces. And in 2D world, everything was much more tightly under control.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think of a lot of early 3D games. The N64, the PS1, the Dreamcast, even into the PS2, had jank in them trying to figure out how do we make a game 3D. Like,
I mean, the earliest days of like PlayStation 1 3D games now, those were jank.
Yeah. Yeah, oh, absolutely. When looking at like what Nintendo took out of the oven in Mario 64 and being like, well, shit, how do we do that? And it's like, oh, let's try. And then it turns out being like, oh, we don't actually know how to do this. So we're gonna try
Castlevania 64 was just like absolute jank. Or like races in the 64 area, like Beetle Adventure Racing or even Diddy Kong Racing I remember, animations bugging out in Diddy Kong Racing and like clipping through the walls constantly based on speed and angle and stuff like that. But it never, I think it was mainly because I was a child. It never really angered me. It was like, oh, I've done something. Jank has this kind of like naughty quality to it. Like you were saying, Yahtzee, of doing something you shouldn't be. I love clipping out of bounds by accident in games. I feel like I've discovered like a secret, there's a wonderful YouTube show that does that.
Players love feeling like they've gotten one over the game.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah. And there was a time when developers tried to make games where you could be the bad guy, and like games like Overlord and Evil Genius. And I always felt like those were sort of missing the point. They were trying to give the player the opportunity to be naughty, but as long as they were doing it within the constraints they defined, then it didn't feel like being naughty.
Yeah.
Being naughty meant jumping on people's heads in Half-Life. It meant being a bad guy in GTA. Not because the game made you, but because you could.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of it is like allowing players the freedom and expression to make their own fun. And whether that is going out of bounds, whether that is like, fucking around and just being a menace or anything like that. And those, I feel like good jank comes from there. Like the players being able to like slip through the wrinkles and create their own little pockets of fun.
I've got a great example of this. So like these things can objectively ruin an experience for you, and I did this in Elden Ring. So we were playing it. I think we had like an early copy, and this was before there was guides and stuff like that, and they patched this out incredibly quick. But Moog, the Blood Lord guy, I saw all of the like graves around his arena, like before you enter, and I was jumping and parkouring up, and I managed to jump into his arena so that his AI doesn't trigger. So I could just walk up to him and I killed him. And I was laughing the entire time, and I objectively missed out on. I did it on subsequent playthroughs, but I missed out on a really good fight. But that memory of me accidentally doing that and ruining that boss fight is something that I hold in my mind as a fond, happy memory, because I got one up on the game. It was like before they patched it, you could exploit it.
Famously, there's a couple of boss fights in Dark Souls where you can see the boss before you enter the arena if you get at the right angle. And you can, if you just snipe them with an bow and arrow, you can just kill them before you even enter the fight. And the game allows for it. Like the game goes, okay, that counts. You beat the boss.
Yeah. I mean, FromSoft is definitely probably like FromSoft might be the biggest AAA beloved developer who also still has jank in their games.
Huge.
And it's like acceptable jank. Like people are rarely mad at jank in FromSoft games. And honestly, jank is a lot of the character of FromSoft games. Like a lot of the like weird physics situations you find yourself in, or sort of the physical comedy that comes from playing the games. Can come from that. Whereas, like we mentioned before, when it's in a Bethesda game, or even like, I don't know, I'll be curious to see Obviously, Witcher 3 was beloved, even though it had plenty of bugs and glitches and wrinkles to it. But I feel like warmly received, whereas when Cyberpunk dropped, that was lambasted for coming out of the oven way too early and charging full price to the point where they had to pull it out of the store shelves of specific consoles. And so I'm curious. It feels like CD Projekt might have passed that point where Bethesda has, where it's like, oh, you're kind of held to a different standard, maybe
level of accountability.
They're not the indies anymore. They're not the tryhards. They're the establishment. We expect a certain amount of polish from the establishment.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, also, what's the point? Yeah,
I get this feeling as well of, I don't know what it is, if it's just like entitlement as a gamer, but once I understand that a company has made so much money off of a product, I stop tolerating jank. So I've been playing begrudgingly. I say that. Been playing a lot of Dead by Daylight at the moment, and that game is jank, has crazy bad UI and stuff like that. Hello, Jess. And I stop tolerating the jank in that game because people go, "Oh, it's just jank. They're a scrappy, indie team," and it's like they've made so much money. Like they should be fixing these things. Like it stops being quaint and starts being like, well, there's so many of them, and you guys have so much money. You should probably be trying to fix these things rather than just accepting it.
Actually, that's not always the case, because I just remembered thinking of examples of jank that has made me go, "Aw," and had more fun. Was one time when I was playing Red Dead Redemption. Now that's AAA by any definition.
Oh, yes.
But I was playing Red Dead Redemption, and for some reason, the Euphoria physics just failed the walking animations, and John Marsden just started roller skating around the terrain just without moving his legs. But there was a little bit of physics, so they were sort of vibrating as they went along the rough terrain.
Yeah.
That made me laugh. But if that was
consistent, right? Yeah, and I agree. I also recently just completed the remaster of Red Dead. And the frequency as well, I think, is also a component of jank, because if that was happening every other time you got out of a cutscene, it would probably stop being funny and start being like, well, you should probably fix this. But if it happens,
yes, that's exactly what happened, Eric.
Shot in a Spike Lee.
But yeah, it happened once the whole time I was playing the game, and it did not reduce my opinion of the game at all.
Yeah, frequency is a huge thing.
Yeah, I don't feel like Rockstar was ever lambasted for their jank until the GTA trilogy remastered, which was not them who developed it, but they signed off on it. They had the money and everything, which came out in like a horrid state. Like,
well, that wasn't jank. That was just bad.
So that was just bad. Yeah. So that's like a clear line of demarcation where this one Rockstar thing is considered jank, and then this other, tangential Rockstar thing is like fleecing customers of their money, which has just recently finally been patched through. Like several years later, now apparently the GTA Trilogy Definitive Edition is good. So
yes, bad is robbing a bank, running into the bank, waving a gun, your trousers fall down your ankles, and you fall over and shoot yourself in the leg. That's jank.
Yeah,
but if that happens every day, it's not good.
Well, it's bad for you. It'll never stop being funny to the people who work in the bank, I'm sure.
Yeah.
I wanted to also bring up purposeful jank. Games that have made their bread and butter out of weaponizing jank or mechanicizing. Ooh, that's not a word, jank.
Harnessing the jank.
Harnessing jank. Well, or mechanicizing. Either way. Bennett Foddy, obviously, with games like QWOP and Getting Over It, upcoming Baby Steps, and the sort of the cottage industry genre that's
Surgeon Simulator,
Surgeon Simulator,
Octodad,
I Am Bread, Chained Together, which we played.
I also think mechanical jank can be expressed by just allowing the player to do things. Baldur's Gate 3, I think, is an incredibly jank game, but intentionally so. They allow for these interactions that probably gameplay-wise shouldn't be allowed because they break the game, but the player thinks they could happen, so they allow it to happen. They want this jank. These jank interactions to play out.
See, for me, Goat Simulator feels like it sort of crosses the line into sort of Birdemic 2 areas where they try too hard to lean into it.
Oh,
Yeah, in ways,
like
for sure.
it's gone full circle of parody, and it's kind of like what is this game actually saying?
Yeah,
Because you're
squirrel with a
expecting
gun.
it, right? You're
Squirrel with a
expecting
gun
it, so
absolutely
Yeah.
crosses that line.
Yeah, you can almost feel when a game gets revealed, generally an indie game, and you see it during a showcase, and you're like, oh, this is almost a meme, right? Like the point of this is to, I don't know, but then you have something like Another Crab's Treasure, which was like, oh, a Souls-like, but you play a crab and you can have a gun, and on paper you're like, okay, this feels like a little like I'm just trying to skate off the power of an animated GIF on Twitter. But then the game comes out and it's really good. So
yeah.
Arctic Eggs suddenly leapt to mind as games the weaponized jank.
yeah, that's the
haven't
core
played
mechanic
that.
of that trying to fry your eggs is janky as all fuck. But I guess purposefully.
Postal. The Postal 2 would be a game that probably sits on the borderline for me.
Yeah.
Of playing into the jank. Postal 3 absolutely tries too hard to lean into the jank, and it's just kind of lame and annoying.
Yeah.
I also just think there's jank in every single game you'll ever play ever, because every game is barely being held together with string and straw and is ready to break at any point, and it will.
Maybe yours are.
Wait, so how many patches did you do for Starstruck? Yes.
A few. None in a while.
Yes, no, that's legit really good.
No, I mean I completely agree. Every game, like some of the most revered games,
it's a miracle
of the
that any
century
game comes out.
Jank. Yeah, but like Breath of the Wild has jank, Half-Life 2 has jank, Elden Ring has jank. Like I feel like the only way you're really able to, I guess the only things without jank are like the smallest, tightest, like most focused experiences. I don't even know if I can name a game without jank.
Balatro? Does Balatro have jank?
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe not.
Jank, I think, but
I guess again, maybe that's weaponized jank.
I think it's two extremes, right? Like you said, small experiences, but also, as Yahtzee mentioned at the top of the pod, it was AAA games that have all of their corners rounded off, that are just about individual mechanical focuses and telling you that story, and they don't allow for any of that experimentation. That doesn't have it either.
Supermassive games is what I think of when I think of overly polished jank avoidance.
Like Until Dawn and stuff?
Yeah, because there's very tight movement controls, so you can't do anything that doesn't resemble normal human movement. And it's kind of like sluggish to control and annoying. And all you can do is pick stuff up and comment on them. And everything else is cutscene.
Yeah, it's funny. I was going to say, I feel like jank is birthed the second you give the player like the tools for player expression and player freedom. And it's funny that those supermassive games have storylines. They're all about player freedom. Like, this is a choose your own adventure, but there's no jank in them because it's not really player freedom, right?
Because obviously they can't allow for every possible thing you could do.
It's just a choose your own adventure book in video game form.
Yeah.
Quite.
Yeah.
Shall we go to Super Chats? There were like 5 before we even started today.
I have a bunch of topics I haven't brought up, but I saw specifically got mentioned in Super Chat, so I was waiting for that.
Everyone's got jank opinions. Jank pinions.
Jank pinions! That was a good portmanteau.
Alex Armstrong gives $5 and says, off topic. Oh, well, great fucking start. Last Thursday was the Nintendo DS's 20th anniversary. Do you think it was a good system at the time, and what were your favorite games on it?
I think it was weird as shit. I was like, why
that's a whole other fucking podcast. Surely. Save that for next week.
Yeah, let's save it for next week. I've got a bunch of opinions on the DS.
Oh, can we just talk about handheld games next week? That sounds nice.
Yeah, let's do it.
Basically every Castlevania on the DS.
Oh, yes.
I don't like how now when people are trying to port those games, like it takes a bit because you have to figure out like what do we do with this fucking bottom screen?
Dual
like,
screen,
how intense was this bottom screen?
I've got the.
They're even weird to emulate. Like even if you try to steal them, they're weird.
Tell you what I did with the bottom screen when I was playing Castlevania Dawn of Sorrow. Download a fucking fan patch for the ROM that removes all the fucking touchscreen gimmicks, and the game plays perfectly well without them. What do you know?
I've got the Dominus collection of Castlevania, which is a bunch of the DS games, and at the beginning it's like, how do you want to display the other screen? And it's just like 10 different ways of doing it, and it's
fucking don't.
confusing.
That would be my preference. Yeah. I've just been replaying Circle of the Moon in like the earlier GBA Castlevania collection, actually.
Good games.
But
How are you finding it?
I'm enjoying it as just a thing to do with my hands. I always prefer Aria of Sorrow, though. Circle of the Moon's a little bit too copy-pasty in the environments for my taste.
I love Castlevania.
Tune in for more on handheld games.
Anyway, yes, maybe next week. Gildon Yetic gives $5 and says, while being hyped for a broken release is a traumatic experience, I need a janky, ambitious games more than stable reproductions of the tried and true. I agree, Gildon Yetic.
Yeah.
I want to see the stumbling that comes with the process of scientific discovery.
Yeah, and a lot of times...
that dude hadn't left his moldy petri dishes around, would we ever have had penicillin? No, we wouldn't.
And a lot of times, like the birth of those of like beloved, mechanics or ideas might come from a game that originally launched and was, janky as hell.
A lot of games realized where the fun was in the process of development.
100%. Yeah.
Look at all those superpowers in Tears of the Kingdom that were originally dev tools. Or how Gunpoint used to be about pointing guns at people, but midway through development decided it was more fun to jump through windows and rewire electronics.
Yeah, or even how a game like Jurassic Park Trespasser does like the HUD-less information in a kind of a fucked up way, but a way that other games later would do.
The pioneer of tit health.
Yeah, tit health. Look down your tit.
Now that's classic jank for you.
Your jank.
Dr. Theo, member for 10 months in tip jar. Thank you very much. And then gives, 3 $5 super chats in a row. Jank is great for speedrunning. Security Breach has a huge speedrunning community because of how jank it all is. Yeah, speedruns of modern curved edges games just aren't fun at all.
Boring. Yeah.
It's funny. I was going to say, in terms of big AAA developers who feel like their games are the least janky, Nintendo was a developer who comes to mind. But like Nintendo games are some of the most speedrun games out there. Mario 64, Ocarina of Time, Breath of the Wild, all that stuff. And those games thrive on jankiness. On like, I'm going to get up the stairs crazy quick by doing backward jumps and cancels. Or I'm going to teleport from the Deku tree to the end of the game.
Yeah, but that jank exists in the two most popular speedrunning games I think of all time are Mario 64 and Ocarina of Time. And the jank exists in those games because they were experimenting to allow the players to have mechanical expression. So there's a direct correlation between those things.
I mean, you can speedrun any game, so the most popular speedrun games are generally just the most popular games. The games people have the most nostalgia for and have played the most. Minecraft is somehow a really big speedrunning game because it's so fucking popular.
Yeah.
Dr. Theo then adds, Astral Spiff did the legendary 600% run where you beat Security Breach 6 times, getting all 6 endings, but also doing the 100% completion each time. 17-hour run. Well, that's just mental.
Isn't Security Breach the bad
yes,
Freddy's game?
It's fucking awful, but the kids and their the kids and their Five Nights at Freddy's, they can't get enough of that shit.
I mean, I guess maybe if Five Nights at Freddy is getting kids into horror, which will get them to find better horror, and then getting them into speedrunning, which will maybe get them into better speedrunning, then that's good. A net positive. I'm going to say it's a net positive.
And Dr. Theo finally adds, also jank can lead to literal game mechanics to be used in the future. That's how we got rocket jumping from Quake.
Yep.
That's a game that benefits from taking the hands off the player and letting them go hog wild.
Yeah, that's a great one.
Dale Mallows also gives 3 super chats in a row. What is this? What is this?
What is this?
Gives $2 and says my favorite jank game is Azure Dreams on the PS1. And then adds, I'll listen later, gents. I got to go take a shit. Spreading that across his second 2 super chats. Azure Dreams. What was that?
Don't say spreading it across his 2 super chats.
I mean, that is literally what he did.
Yeah.
Azure Dreams, I actually never played. It was a Konami JRPG, and I remember its box, but I never actually played it. And apparently it was a roguelike RPG, which I don't feel we had a lot of roguelikes back then.
Why didn't they just call it Blue Dreams?
That's a great question.
As
a
Your
different
Dreams just
take,
sounds pretentious to me.
I mean, RPG titles are all about sounding pretentious, right?
Well, there you go.
Yeah.
Eternal Sonata. There you go. Name I'm not even going to try to pronounce, but is presumably Polish, gives 10 Polish zlotys and says, "A new cheeky breaky IV damk."
Eurojank.
Jank.
That certainly is a janky super chat.
Shout
And
to
then
Paul.
Yahtzee will wear a green
Cheeky
hat in
breaky.
3 weeks. I think, wasn't it 3 weeks last week? Yahtzee will wear a green hat
I
in
mean,
3
you're going to
weeks.
see. Keep reading.
I think you're slipping. He gives 5 euros and says, "It's 2 weeks, actually. YouTube just doesn't let me change my name anymore." Oh, okay.
I think YouTube thinks
I wonder why.
you're trying to. Yeah. This person's trying to change their name every single week, huh? Are they trying to avoid banning, or what's going on here?
Crypt's got to be my favourite jank game. Anyway, clock's ticking. Willy Fiddlers.
Cryptis.
Cryptis. What's that one?
Cryptis.
Cryptis.
Just came out earlier this year. Sounds like.
Oh, okay.
Looks like a shooter. It's very magenta. Just literally the color magenta.
All right. Not magenta in the metaphorical sense.
No, magenta in the literal sense.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Looks like a 32-bit era style shooter that has lots of bright colours in it. Yes, indeed.
Metaphysically magenta.
Alex Armstrong gives $2 and says, "Jank as Sonic Heroes is, I still have fun with it." Okay.
Sonic games, especially 3D Sonic games, tend to have a lot.
Oh, yes.
Even the ones
Sonic
I really
2006
enjoy.
was
Yeah.
dense with the worst kind of jank.
That was like where almost Jank took a step over into like, oh, this might be actually broken. Whereas
Yes.
100%.
Sonic Adventure, very janky, but charming.
Because
Sonic
those
Frontiers,
games
janky
don't
but
really allow you to do much. You most of the time run along a track. So when I'm running along a track and it's jank, that's just bad. That's not like, oh, it's quaint because they couldn't do this thing. Like they just can't make you run forward properly.
Problem is, he gotta go fast. If
He
you keep
do,
letting
though.
anything
That's his
stand
only
in the way of
thing.
that.
I mean, could we maybe not go fast so we avoid dropping things?
What if we just go at like a healthy, brisk speed?
A leisurely pace.
Yeah.
A leisurely pace, yeah.
I was going through that the new version of Half-Life 2 with all the developer commentary they added. And I got to like the chapter where you're driving the buggy around the roads. And they're all like, hey, the key element of this chapter was trying to give the player a sense of speed and powerfulness.
Yeah.
Although, if you actually time it, your buggy only moves to maximum speed of 35 miles per hour.
Oh,
I was
so
like,
quick.
well, shit, why isn't Sonic doing that? Just moving at a nice, manageable 35 miles an hour whilst just making you feel like you're going
Just put
fast
speed
and
lines
crazy.
on the side.
What is Sonic running from? That's the real question.
What are we all running?
Himself.
Oh my god.
Think about
The
it.
one thing he can never escape.
Think about it.
Tom Schrader D gives 25 Polish zlotys and says, "I think jank is usually used for games that are ambitious and interesting, but lacked budget or resources for polish, generally indie games." Well, thank you for clarifying the definitions there, Tom Schrader D.
Funny, a lot of the I guess the indie games that tend to try to do something
Yes.
big and like ambitious.
I mean, case in point, Alex Armstrong gives $2 and says, "Would you defend Consuming Shadow's janky visuals?" No, because my visuals of my game, The Consuming Shadow, were not janky, they were low effort. And I think we established that ambition is the key to jank. And I just really wasn't trying at all when I was doing the art of The Consuming Shadow.
Well, and it feels like jank isn't an aesthetic thing as we defined it, right? Like jank isn't visuals or audio. Jank is
It can
friction
be.
that comes from mechanics.
I mean, when I think of janky visuals, I think of like early 3D realistic characters where they were trying to create a realistic look, but the characters looked like, well, they looked like Lara Croft in Tomb Raider 1.
Yeah.
It's interactions, right? Jank can be T-posing. It can be, the audio mismatching with the lip sync in one scene, right? It can be through visuals and audio, but it just has to be the interactions between the game systems not quite gelling or like connecting as intended.
Yeah, it's
rather
almost
than
like the
anything in
jank in
particular.
Superman 64 is a game that's notoriously buggy and janky and everything. And I don't think its art direction is what people are pointing at. It's like the completely fucked top to bottom physics of flying, of Superman moving on the ground, of how he looks and everything. Like it's less that building is janky and more of like just the act of existence in this world. Yeah, life is janky in this world. Yeah.
I brought up Superman 64 when I was talking about the Silent Hill 2 remake in Semi-Emblematic, because they were doing the same thing with fog. They were like, oh, we can't render as much as the world, we'll just say it's a foggy day.
Yeah.
But what works in horror, turns out, doesn't work so well in Superman 64.
Shocking.
Halkengard gives $5 and says, Unity built-in physics and Unity asset store are patient zero for modern jank. So this is part of the reason I really don't want to try to learn how to make 3D games. I'm happy making 2D pixel art, thank you very much. The extra dimension is hard to get my head around.
Yeah. Don't get me started on Unity. I don't even want to talk about it. Go use a better engine.
Okay. What would you recommend these days for the ones making 3D games?
UE5 or Godot.
Okay. And I still recommend Game Maker if you're happy to stick with 2D.
Yeah,
don't make
2D's
games in it
great.
because they fucking suck. But it's
Game Maker and Godot for 2D for me.
But there's a surprisingly small number of gameplay genres that absolutely need 3D graphics to work. First-person games, yes. Flight simulators, yes. Otherwise, you could probably get away with just keeping it 2D, if you ask me.
Yeah.
Also, if you want a good 3D engine, go back in time, sneak into Konami headquarters, and just steal the Fox engine. That was great.
Yeah, easy peasy.
Easy peasy. What could possibly go wrong?
Ryan Betts gives $2 and says, what's Second Wind's verdict on Outlast Trials? Fun? Jank? Fun and jank?
I ain't played it, so
No, neither did I. We had a delightful time chatting with the creative director of at Red Barrels on one of the last episodes of Breakout back in the old home. So my history with that series is I've played the single player games. And I think the first one was pretty impressive for the time. The second one's kind of whatever, and the creative director.
Second one's bloody awful.
Charming.
First game's good. Second game, complete shithouse.
Rocks.
I panned it in my review.
Yeah, and then I think the third game, the Outlast Trials, is a multiplayer game, which is, I mean, why Yahtzee did not play.
It's out of my wheelhouse.
Yeah,
yes.
It outlasted us.
Polish name I'm still not going to try to pronounce. Missed one. Alex Armstrong gives $2 and says totally accurate Battlegrounds is intentional jank.
Yeah,
I remember that. Because
isn't that totally accurate Battle Simulator, or is Battlegrounds?
They made totally accurate Battle Simulator. Then for April Fools they made like a PUBG ripoff in the same engine.
Oh.
But it was actually like a fully functional battle royale game, and like a lot of people played that instead of Totally Accurate Battle Simulator. So
that's the same team. They did the same thing this year with Content Warning at the beginning of the year. Like it's funny that their little like goof one-off things end up kind of blowing up, and they're making this game called Haste. We featured.
This is literally what happened with Fortnite with the original. It wasn't like the original game. They made a battle royale mode, and it completely eclipsed the original intended game.
Yep.
So don't make a joke battle royale mode unless you're willing to commit to it for the rest of your life, is the lesson we're learning from all of this.
Can I try the next name? Can I try the next name?
Okay, you try pronouncing it.
Archek Wiepszowi.
Oh, you just looked it up.
I did not. That's fucking Polish. I've had to pronounce dumb shit like this my whole life. Sorry, it's not dumb. It's just hard to pronounce names.
Well, name Marty just said gives 25 Polish zlotys and says, Second Wind Outlaws versus Stalker 2, which one would you take? Technically, both in a very similar state of technical fidelity. Well, I haven't played Stalker 2 very long, but so far I'll take it over Star Wars Outlaws. I'll say that right now.
Agreed.
I'd take Star Wars because I'm so goddamn sick of post-apocalyptic settings.
Oh, well, that was deeply sick of them. That was actually the rejected topic for this week's podcast.
It was.
Behind the scenes information fans.
Well, actually, technically, Marty, Stalker doesn't take place in a post-apocalyptic society. It's only the zone.
I think I'm dying.
Yes, the rest of the world's fine.
I think we all are, slowly.
Anyway.
But yeah, I take Stalker 2. Stalker 2. Because of budgetary reasons, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Also, Star Wars Outlaws feels, for me, more on the polished side of things.
Mm-hmm.
There's not enough jank. There's not enough shit to do.
Yeah,
The cities
I didn't
feel
see
really...
any jank when I played.
No, the cities in particular just feel really restrictive. And it's just like 100 game mechanics that are all kind of shallow and none of them really go into enough detail to get as far as being jank.
It's also one of those games that I'm going to be curious to see how people view this game in a few years because this is an entirely different topic, but like something like No Man's Sky or Final Fantasy XIV, it has been getting consistent updates since launch, including massive like overhauls to the combat and the stealth system and like getting rid of stealth insta-fails, like things that it just seems like you should not have released the game when you released it, clearly. Like you should have waited to do this.
Even so, I have a feeling what people are going to be saying about it in a few years is, what's that then? Was that one of those straight to Netflix, straight to Disney Plus Star Wars spin-off series I didn't watch?
Yeah. It's also, Ubisoft has become one of those companies where like it's hard to find good, actual, real criticism that isn't just I have a bone to pick with Ubisoft. Like,
no, I'm kind of with you there. You're
you know what I
like,
mean? They're like the punching bag, the low hanging fruit. Let's jump on this thing.
You're basically summarizing everything I've said about every Ubisoft game I've reviewed in the last few years. Hey, it's another Ubisoft open world game, and it's functional, but it's fucking bland and it sucks.
Yeah.
Abdel Corrales gives $5 and says, "Hey guys, love your show. How many Skyrim copies does Jamate own now?"
5.
5.
Normal version, total. Anniversary version, the anniversary version on the Switch version, and 2 VR versions.
Should have done it on the Switch version. You could have dressed up as Link.
I didn't even try the Switch version.
I had to buy the anniversary version on Steam for this challenge because I hadn't played it since I bought it retail for the PS3 in a box.
Jesus.
No, wait, is it the Switch? No. The Switch version's the one I didn't try. I have 2 anniversary versions. I had the anniversary version on the PC or on Steam, and that didn't work, so I tried the Game Pass version. So I own it, but I didn't buy it. So I bought 4 versions, but tried 5. Could have tried 6 with the Switch version, but... Fuck that. Fuck you, Todd.
Todd the Rod God.
Fuck you, Todd.
Dickhead.
Frogs disseminating other frogs for friends gives $5 and says, Brainwave, Christmas season is in 3 weeks. So Yahtzee will wear a green hat, is predicting Yahtzee will wear an elf hat. Yahtzee should wear a Santa hat instead.
Ooh.
Or I could just not wear a hat, so you could enjoy this lovely haircut I got over the weekend.
I didn't know she got a haircut. Look at you.
You look shorn.
Yes, I know. I look professional.
Extended pause.
Sorry, I thought I'd accidentally muted my headset or something when I brushed my
because the haircut's so good.
That was just the silence of eternity cutting through.
Anyway, Bookworm776 gives $5 and says, donation to Jamate's Skyrim deficit. For the topic, my personal favourite jank is awkward animation in old JRPGs like Tales of Symphonia.
Yeah.
Okay.
Clipping.
Awkward animation. Yeah. Yeah, or where it's like, listen, we only have a handful of animations for this thing, for this game, and we just got to use what we got to use. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hang on, I'm just going to attempt to foil Eric's filter.
Oh,
he did it.
Oh no!
Oh no! Balaclava Santa. If you become a pirate, if Yahtzee becomes a pirate ninja, he can foil.
It's the eyes. It's the eyes that set it off. Where was I? Jacob Kitty gives $2 and says, Jermaine needs another dog named Narrative Dissonance. No, you need three dogs. One called Ludo, one called Narrative, one called Dissonance.
Mm-hmm. Consider
But then that leads to the awkward scenario where two of them die first, and then you're left with a dog called Dissonance, and everyone's like, wow, you must really like Castlevania games.
Then you get two more dogs in Harmony and Of.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then Dissonance and Harmony die, and everyone's asking why you got a game called Of.
Yeah.
Then you got to buy two more dogs called Symphony and Night.
And the.
Yeah. And then Symphony and Of die, and everyone's saying, oh, you must really like Cyberpunk games, and the process continues.
Reinvent myself through dog ownership.
Alex Armstrong gives $5 and says, in Dev Diary, you said to only make sequels to expand world and characters. What is your rule on prequels, and when should reboots and remakes be allowed? Look, if there's a story that can make a prequel, then whatever, but there very rarely is. Because one bit of writing advice I was once given was, are you telling us the most interesting thing that has ever happened to the main character? And if not, why aren't you telling us that? And if you've already done that, then the prequel is obviously going to be a less interesting story in the life of this character. And so often the prequels, the whole story is just the stuff that led up to the interesting story, like fucking Rogue One. And why would anyone care? I ask you.
But we got that sweet shot of...
was cool.
Yeah.
We can say a sweet shot of Vader coming out of that hallway.
We got that sweet shot of Vader, which is cool, but that's about it.
There you go.
I mean, you know, if you took away the context of the fact that it's leading up to Star Wars: A New Hope, what would you take away from that? You're like, hey, why did you just stop? Just it was getting good.
I hate prequels that pander, and if you're going to do one that doesn't pander and just tells a unique story, you might as well just write a new story that doesn't have to connect to something.
And I think I've said before, a good sequel sees the original as something to jump off from, to explore new worlds. And a bad sequel is just wallowing in the original, or repeating it.
Agreed.
Anyway, Dr. Theo gives $5 and says, remember Surgeon Simulator? That's probably my favourite Jank on Purpose game back in the day. Surprisingly amazing soundtrack too. I do remember that.
Yeah. I don't remember the soundtrack.
No.
Surgeon Simulator, I know it's got ported to VR, but VR seems like a realm filled with jank, right? Just based on, it's like the equivalent of early 3D games where it's like, we're learning what we're doing. We're building the railroad tracks in front of us as we go.
I feel like Surgeon Simulator probably get a lot easier in VR because like the premise of the original was that you were trying to manipulate your hands with like really awkward mouse controls.
Yeah. And
if you had like one-to-one hand movement with your fucking Valve Index grippy controllers, then surely it would get easy peasy.
Jay, was it you who in old videos you were writing things on the whiteboards in Half-Life Alyx?
I certainly was doing that.
My Half-Life Alyx video, which I might remake, is one of my favorite things because in the video I'm doing diagrams of game dev stuff on the whiteboard and I play the piano in the video to the music in the back of the video.
Yeah.
I loved making that video. It was so much fun.
That's cool. That's not janky, that's just cool.
Yeah.
Wojtek gives $5. That I do know how to pronounce now.
Great pair.
Morning, lads. Just finished watching your bucket hunt. Skyrim always felt like one of the few cases where the jank added to the game experience. Well, I certainly remember that one bit where an old lady sort of sank into the ground as she was going up a flight of stairs. More than I remember anything that happened in the plot of Skyrim.
Well, and Skyrim as a whole is an interesting case study for Yahtzee. You mentioned having the PS3 version. The PS3 version famously was I think, transcended jank to become a little bit broken, and Bethesda either took a very long time to fix it, or possibly just never fixed it on PS3. So I feel like and also things might be case by case basis. Where like you talked about Assassin's Creed Unity, like I played it on Xbox One, I think, for review, and I didn't really have any bugs. Whereas folks who played on PC seem to just have a fucking bevy of bugs.
So even after I switched to the console version, I remember falling through the floor at least once. I think I've fallen through the floor at least once in every Assassin's Creed game, thinking about it.
Not an Assassin's Creed game unless you fucking fall to the center of the earth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, looking up fruitlessly as you watch the terrain
Yeah,
drift away into the sky.
Yeah.
Halkengard gives $10 and says, "How do you guys think you'll feel when Gen AI inevitably gets used for real-time NPC dialogue stroke decision making? Might be
Yeah.
cool in Dwarf Fortress or RimWorld, but also soulless, probably. I suspect there's going to be a whole new dimension of jank coming out of that."
I've seen it in motion. A lot of the students at the uni I used to teach at were using systems to be able to do that because they couldn't afford voice actors because they're poor ass students.
Yeah.
It was jank, but you can see that it could get to a point where it's, kind of only slightly noticeable in key moments where it could be a little bit jank. I don't think this should be something we should do. I think we should be paying voice actors and artists to do these things, but it's definitely going to be possible in the next few years, I think.
Well, AI is always going to be limited. I was watching that Tom Scott video about the things AIs will never understand. Like if I were to, his example was that if you say the phrase, "I put the trophy in the suitcase to protect it from getting damaged," what is the "it" in that sentence referring to?
Yeah.
That an AI would not know because it would need to know all sorts of background shit, like what is a suitcase and what is it primarily used for.
Yeah.
Frogs disseminating other frogs for friends gives $2 and says, "Also jank bad game. Unknown 9 was wildly awful."
That was a recent one. That was one of those games
that's the one that just
born into existence, and I'd never played it.
Yeah, I remember that. That just appeared out of nowhere. Nobody played it, and then it disappeared again. But it had surprisingly
Never even
good
heard of it.
But it had like a pedigree, didn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it was published by Bandai Namco.
Yeah, it's. I mean, there's a lot of effort that seems to have gone into it. I'm looking up the developer. Oh no other games listed. Never mind
I
then.
don't know if they were like a studio that came from they worked together on X.
Well, there was like a famous actor in it.
Yeah, it might have been that.
Hang on,
yeah, it seems like there's some of those when like a AA game really tries to be AAA. I feel like that's when we get again that blurred line between jank and bugs, where it's like a reach.
Yeah, makes me think of Flintlock: The Siege of Dawn.
Yeah, or even like Immortals of Avium last year.
It stars that lady who played Yennefer in the Witcher TV series.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, I clicked on that screenshot on the Steam page, and I was like, "Why does she look familiar?"
Yeah, that lady.
Mm-hmm.
Hjorth87 gives 20 Danish kroner and says, "Is Baldur's Gate 3 janky? Has ton of fun exploits, barrelmancy."
Yeah, I think kind of like what Jay said, where it's in trying to replicate the very freeform nature of an actual D&D game, where you can make something happen if you're persuasive enough, and if you have a DM who's open to that kind of stuff, and if the rolls go the right way. And it's one thing for that to happen in your imagination or on a little game board, and then it's another thing to see it happen in a game.
Yeah. And then you're not mad about it, right? If something does go wrong and there is jank and the game breaks, you're just like, well, I was trying something kind of dumb and stupid. Like, I kind of forgive that and you move on. Or you try again in a different way.
Tsunami Dusha pulls his signature move. I think at this point we'd be more annoyed if he did write anything. $20, no comment.
Or maybe saving it all up and just writing a little novella for us at the end of the year to have to read.
He'd ruin his mystique.
Classic Dushin.
Doran Grossman Naples gives $2 and says, "I tend to think of jank in terms of mechanics."
I think
no further elaboration.
No, but I think it's mechanics over aesthetics.
Oh, sorry. He elaborates in his next super chat where he gives $10 and says, "E.g., Dark Souls has tons of weird unexplained mechanics like miracle resonance and grave lording that actually enhance the atmosphere and serve as foundation for a sort of community mythology."
I think that's jank though. That's just a mechanic that's hidden. I do agree that, as we said earlier, I think jank comes from interactions between either the player or systems having friction and that causing an unintended outcome.
Yeah.
That's where it stems from. So in a way, mechanics.
And between those, Ryan Betts gives $5 and says, "Can we think of a term more condemnatory?" I don't think that's a real word. than buggy for cases where a money printing franchise like Pokemon releases a mess like Pokemon Scarlet.
I don't know. Pokemon Scarlet and Violet just became the best-selling generation of Pokemon ever, surpassing Green, Blue, and
as we learned in recent certain political elections, the general public are just dumb.
They just don't care.
Don't know what they want or what they're going to get.
Yeah.
You just wait till next time, though. Man, those pocket monsters, they're going to be looking nice.
They get what they deserve. The audience gets what they deserve.
You get points.
Always. Alex Armstrong comes back with $2 and says, Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom utilize Jank in inventive and crazy ways.
Yeah.
Yes.
I feel like that is weaponizing Jank. Yeah.
Or harnessing.
If you can't beat them, jank them.
What would be a game that weaponizes Jank? The Half-Life 2 gravity gun?
Ooh. That's good. Yeah, literal weaponizing Jank. Yeah.
There you go.
You know what we should do? We should get ourselves in a good old-fashioned jank off. We should start we should start having a jank off.
You know, I was just thinking that it's been a while since we all janked off together.
It is, yeah.
So get in a call.
Hold hands.
Maybe before the holidays. We do it nice. We jank off.
Yeah, let's get our hands nice and warm. Get our hands nice and warm.
What are you guys talking about? I'm talking about a little tournament to figure out what the most janky game is.
We should do a Jank Battle Masters episode. So who can find the jankest?
Yes.
Who can jank the most?
And the last one to finish has to eat the biscuit.
Oh no, that's something else.
Last Demosas gives 50 somethings and says Warframe coptering stroke bullet jump is jank done right.
Yeah, it seems like movement. A lot of interesting movement techs and strats have come from Jank.
Like original Quake is full of that, the speedrunning community. You can get like a speed boost if like an enemy shoots you as you run away from them. And that's how someone beat E2M1 in like 4 seconds or something. Something ridiculous like that. Hjorth87 gives 20 Danish kroner and says Minotaur in a porcelain store was free and janky. I think I remember that.
What? That sounds
I like
great.
the name of the game.
Yeah, where you played a Minotaur in a China shop.
Sure.
And you had to keep your business afloat without getting too angry.
Oh, that's tough. It's probably going to knock shit over. Oh, this is not what I thought the game would look like. This is from a long time ago.
Probably.
Yeah.
Peter gives 4.99 and says, in love with Stalker 2, most atmospheric and beautiful game I've played in a while. Also, thanks for your glowing recommendation of Silent Hill 2. So good.
Is that sarcastic?
I'm going to play more Stalker 2 today, I think.
You gonna be stalking?
Man, if there's something that is jank already, it's probably the fucking voice acting and the range of accents on display. Where's the main character from? I don't know. It's like where he's from moves 200 miles with every line he says.
Yeah, he traveled a lot as a kid.
Presumably.
Yeah.
Hawkeye Goth gives 100 Swedish krona and says Dragon Age Origins can be pretty janky since it tried to translate real-time with pause combat from old CRPG into 3D. Also fucking memory leaks, making me tear my beard out trying to make it work. See, the endearing bit of jank that always struck me in Dragon Age was after you just killed something and you'd be just completely splattered in blood. And then you go into a conversation and everyone's just doing the old BioWare face, completely placid, like shot reverse shot, while you're completely splattered in blood.
Just covered in gore and viscera.
Yeah. Sovereign gives €5 and says, not sure if it counts as jank, but Marty and his horse ragdolling down a mountain in today's Battle Masters certainly had me laughing.
Yeah, that's just classic Skyrim nonsense.
Shout out to Jesse. I think that was the funniest Battle Masters episode I've watched. Yeah, it was incredibly well edited.
Yes, if you haven't watched it yet, don't miss out, because I do think this is the best one. I think we're finding our feet.
Agreed.
And unfortunately, it was recorded before the Amnesia episode, so yes. I don't know what that means for if we're getting any better. But yeah.
It was also tough because each obviously due to the challenge, each run was an hour, and so
that needed a lot of trimming.
Of fucking footage to call through and make a 35-minute video or whatever.
But if you are on the Patreon, and why aren't you? You must be. Then we usually put out everyone's complete runs for all the Patreon subscribers to enjoy. And I think the sheer weight of shit that needed to be edited out means you missed out on a lot of funny lines from me in my run. I was trying hard. I was doing my best because I knew they were going to edit down to the highlights.
Yeah, that'll be a fun one. I think I actually want to watch everyone's runs.
Yahtzee's bucket improv sesh for a straight hour.
Basically. Super Afro gives £5 and says, do you think there's a correlation between Jank and games that have a dedicated speedrunning community? They often find a lot of fun exploits. As I said, I think it's just really popular games that get the big speedrun communities. But you can cause a lot of excitement by finding a new glitch.
Yeah, you see when suddenly like the world record time goes down like an hour, it's because someone found something after years and years and years. Which
did you know one of the like speedrunning categories I've seen is like 0%, where you try to achieve as little as possible in the game before getting to the ending. Mm-hmm. And did you know like the speedrun for getting the lowest completion percent in Zelda Twilight Princess is like 60 hours long?
Ugh.
And the reason for that is someone discovered that if you get something out of a chest and get to the screen where it shows Link staring at the thing he's just found in the chest, Link, during that sequence, moves backwards very, 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 very slowly. Like a pixel like every hour or something.
Yeah.
And if you leave him to do that for a while in certain places, you can get him to clip through a barrier to get to like clip to the next part of the game without completing that part.
Why does he move back?
How someone finds that out? Like literally, how is that discovered?
Well, they must have just made him AFK.
They found it out as you'd expect. Like someone got to that screen and just by chance had to go off and have lunch or something. And then when they came back, Link had disappeared through a wall.
Backing up a little bit. Stupid Link.
That's one of the interesting things I know from watching speedrun like summary videos. I don't actually watch the speedruns themselves much because they kind of get dull for me. But I love watching videos that explain how the speedruns work. There's a lot you miss just watching people do it.
Yeah.
There's tons of all these arcane button combos they have to do to get this to get the bunny hopping to work. Anyway, Polish name I can't pronounce. Again, Marty, if you would.
Karczak Wieprzowski. No, I fucked it up. That Wieprzowski. Crushed it that time.
Okay. Gives 10 Polish zlotys. Says, I am once again asking Yards to try Felvidek. No, I'm playing Stalker 2 this week. Piss off.
I do not get Felvidek. I played through it in its entirety, and it's a game that has a handful of extremely passionate fans, and I'm just like, it's my little Sebastian. I'm like, I don't understand. I don't get it.
Still not even sure what it is, to be honest with you.
It's Eastern European top-down RPG.
Ah, okay. Slav Jank.
Slav Jank. There you go.
Ryan Betts gives $5. Says, Daryl Talks Games has a video essay about IRL Jank, like how each Monday at 1 p.m. EST, Marty's life becomes Jank as he no-clips into another universe.
Yeah, that is true. Hey, knock on wood. We haven't entered that universe yet this episode. I hope that doesn't jinx us. No.
Hey, Jermaine.
No.
You know what I miss?
What do you miss?
Jammy wagon wheels.
Dude, wagon wheels. Can we get those at the British import shop?
Well, I haven't seen them, but if you need something that approximates wagon wheels, then you can try moon pies.
I've seen those in the store, but they're not the same.
No, they have the elements of a wagon wheel, but they're much fatter. Much fatter biscuits and much fatter marshmallows.
All right, this is a strange question. How did you eat your wagon wheels? Because I always like nibbled the chocolate off the edges and then like separated them.
Well, obviously, yeah. I treated it like an Oreo.
Yes.
I would nibble off the top and peel off the marshmallow disc and eat it by itself.
Yes.
The marshmallow although you had to watch out for that with your jammy wagon wheels because sometimes the jam would cause the marshmallow to tear and you'd be left with a jammy stain on the bottom biscuit.
And you don't want that. Yeah.
No.
No one wants
it. It looked like your bottom biscuit was having its period.
Mm-hmm. Not my bottom biscuit.
No. Oh no, something's coming out of my bottom biscuit.
Mom.
Mummy.
Fucking Ryan bets this is all your fault. We could have had it. We could have stayed in one dimension.
Mike with a Y gives $1. Thanks for changing the subject, Mike with a Y, even though you didn't say anything. And Fungus Finder gives $2 and says, so art can't be jank, but can story be jank? Yeah, I'd say my example of the ludonarrative dissonance in Possessor games feels like a bit of jank on the storytelling side of things.
Yeah, like writing can't be jank, right?
You can have a janky tone. That's the Possessor thing.
Sure. Yeah, like Wanted Dead has a very janky tone of going from one scene to another, and it's like, why am I suddenly doing karaoke after that mission? And this is lasting an entire song. So this is.
I think
expected it.
Like poorly translated games to have that essence of have that feel of being jankily written.
I've been watching like 80s anime OVAs recently, and they have some like just incredibly terrible.
Where the dubbing voice actors have to talk very fast to get everything into the original Japanese line.
And it just doesn't seem like there was any context given to moments, and so there's reactions that just do not make sense to a certain occasion.
Alex Armstrong gives $2 and says, thoughts on Doki Doki Literature Club and Cruelty Squad's janky visuals? I wouldn't have said Doki Doki had janky visuals, unless you count the bits where it pretends like the game's bugging out.
Yeah,
but that's
purposeful
intentional
choice.
It's intentional.
And Cruelty Squad, that's just it's all jank all the time, I suppose. Again, deliberately.
Yeah, deliberately going for a tone. So maybe that's an example. Maybe there's deliberate visual jank. I don't know.
Does it count if it's all jank, like in Cruelty Squad?
Yeah, if you can't spot anything past the jank, then it's not jank.
Yeah.
Like jank needs a point of comparison.
It's jank all the way down.
Yeah.
Halberda84 gives £2 and says, Mario 64, amazing. The camera, janky as fudge. Well, they were pioneering. What do you want?
They were, yeah.
Yeah. And, it ended up being the blueprint for, cameras, even by Nintendo, to make better cameras going into Ocarina of Time. And then, obviously, once a dual analog stick came along.
It's crazy to think that, like, a lot of players don't know or forget that the Mario 64 controller was literally designed the way it was to play that game.
Yeah.
It's crazy. Like, you would never hear of something like that nowadays, and it's because they were pioneering something that had never been done before. It's crazy Mario 64, even though it does have an incredible amount of jank, plays as well as it does. Like, it's nuts.
Park Zek Wee Przawi gives 100 Polish zlotys and says, you know what? Here you go for that spot-on pronunciation. Lol.
I'm going to tell my mom. She's going to be so proud of me. She's going to be so
almost like you're Polish or something.
She's going to be so proud of me.
Crazy.
Then I'm going to play it back, that pronunciation, and she's going to be so ashamed of me. She's going to be like, this is terrible. How could you?
You've insulted our country.
You butchered your grandparents' language.
I mean, I kind of guessed that the first word was pronounced card check.
Card check,
but I've never sure what to do with the WYs.
The PRZ is psh, I believe, so it's a V. Pshovi.
Cool.
Yep, Pshovi. Yeah.
Language is awesome.
Who's that horror artist whose name I had to learn to pronounce while I was...
Baczynski?
Yeah.
Bekins.
Yes, that one. What's his first name again?
Zwaroslav, I believe.
Yeah, that was it.
Yeah, it's got like a Z, some D's, a couple tubs in there. It's great.
Sasigeru 2000 gives €5 and says, do you think normal game design of old can be reclassified as jank in the present? I recently tried to get back into Fallout 2, and I just can't.
I think so.
Certainly old games can feel jank, as we're used to a lot of things. Like if you go back and play like the original Resident Evil 4 on GameCube, the controls for looking around are kind of shit. You can only look immediately to your left or immediately to your right.
Yeah, I think there's a distinction between jank and something being clunky. Mario 64 is clunky. Resi 4 on the GameCube is clunky. Like, you don't quite have this one-to-one. That they didn't really have the movement down, or like the game feel of making something feel heavy. They didn't have it down. So instead of feeling like you're moving a character and a body through game feel, you just feel restricted, like it's not quite doing what you intend it to do. So I think there's a distinction between Jank and Clunk.
Okay, Jank and the Clunk. Everyone, note that down for the glossary.
Those sound like two of the shittiest, like Batman henchmen.
Jank and
oh
Clunk.
no, it's the Bat.
Mobman43 gives 199 and says, any of you read that IGN article about AAA collapse? No, but if it was making the grand revelation that the AAA industry is in the process of collapsing, then I don't think that would be news to any of us.
Mm,
I did not read the article. No,
no, me neither.
Was it good?
I don't know how to read.
Yella gives £5 and says, Jamate has enough Skyrims to get dogs called Fuss, Row, and Da.
Ah,
Straight up.
then they'd fucking fall through the geometry of your apartment. Just end up in the basement.
Yeah, man, fuck Skyrim.
But then Fuss and Row die, and then everyone's like, wow, you must really like Morse code.
Or Fuss and Da die, and they're like, oh, you really like fish eggs?
Or obscure Adventures Night characters. Haha. Jules Rowe gives €2 and says, good jank for me, early Drakengard or Ego Draconis. You really
Draconis,
you like,
what the fuck is that?
Someone's very fond of dragon-adjacent jank, it seems.
Wait, is Ego Draconis? I googled it. It's just Divinity 2.
Okay.
Oh, it was subtitled
just...
Ego Draconis.
Well, why didn't you say Divinity 2 then, Jules Rowe? Then we would have known what you were on about.
Fucking hell.
And Drakengard is pre Nier. Drakengard 1, 2, and 3 are prequels to Nier.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah. 3 especially.
What was that game where you play like a lady with her tits out who rode a dragon all over the place?
Tomb Raider. Oh shit, sorry.
No, that's the other thing. No, it was something like I thought it was Drakengard, but apparently not.
I thought you played dudes in Drakengard.
I think it might have just been called Drakan, like
Drakan tits,
something like that.
There is a game called Draken. Yeah, it's Draken. Draken Order of the Flame. And I've already clicked on it, which means I believe you've brought this up on a podcast before at some point several years ago.
Yahtzee has said the phrase, what's the game with the dragon and the tits?
Yeah, and then I think he's gotten himself to Draken, and then I've Googled it and been like, yeah, that's the game with the tits.
For some reason, I remember that game very clearly, and there's only one reason why I remember it. There's only one moment I remember from it, was that you had a button for summoning your dragon, and you had the ability to press it while standing right in front of him. And if you did that, he'd get kind of testy at you.
Sure.
He'd be like, I'm standing right here.
Sick. I like that. Rather than just like rebooting the animation and making him disappear. That's great.
That team, Surreal Software, only developed 5 games. 2 of them were Draken games. One was the Lord of the Rings, The Fellowship of the Ring, based on the books, which has like a very large boss fight against Tom Bombadil, I think. And then the 2 Suffering games. Remember the Sufferings?
Oh, those were good.
Horror games? Yeah, those are pretty neat. Yeah.
Man. Yet another small studio overreached and ended up dying for it.
Rips.
Fucking Jank Lords.
Jack and Rips.
Foxteague is $5 and says, swamped at work today, but here's $5 to say no game is as janky as this stupid accounting software.
Ah!
Straight up.
Commiserations, Foxteague.
Also, I was finishing off Design Delve today because this video has been cursed, and Premiere deleted all of the audio from my first audio track in an episode focused on audio, and I've had to go through and individually put every clip's audio back in and balance it. I hate Premiere. Anybody knows of a good alternative that can also do After Effects type stuff, hit me up, because fuck that company.
Is Premiere the jankiest program you have to use on a weekly basis? Here?
That, or After Effects, or Photoshop. Anything by Adobe, they suck.
Yeah. Why don't they fuck off and go be part of a wall somewhere?
That was a good Adobe joke. That was a real good. That was a good Pueblo.
Well, on the subject of stopping pissing about and getting back to work, that's the end of the super chats. So thanks for listening to the Windbreakers podcast, in which I am Yahtzee Crowshaw, and that's Jay, and that's Marty.
We're here, and now we're going.
But stick around on Second Wind if you haven't watched today's Battle Masters being the rare treat video we put out now and again, then check it out because it's good.
This one's really good.
I should know because I'm in it.
We all are.
Yes, we all are in it. There you go. That just shows how good it is. If you like my stuff specifically, then once you're done watching that, then look forward to Fully Ramblematic on Wednesday, which will be on the subject of Mario and Luigi Brothership. And also order the Blu-ray, as Eric reminds us, deftly there. And I've also got my Yahtzee Try stream on Wednesday afternoon, where I will play some indie games, yet to be determined. And of course, there'll be the Yahtzee Tries compilation edit going out on Sunday, where Jesse does a very good job putting together the fun clips from the streams, and I do little mini reviews.
It'll probably go
all
on
my
on
stuff
Sunday,
this week.
but it's possible the American holiday in the back half of the week might.
Oh yeah.
But it will still probably.
Bloody
Thanksgiving.
Thanksgiving. I think we should just not do Thanksgiving because nobody's thankful for bloody anything anymore.
I like.
Can
a
we
day
do
off.
one? I haven't experienced it yet. It's my first one.
Oh, right.
Okay, we
Fine.
get one next year. This is the last Thanksgiving. Everyone enjoy this Thanksgiving because this is the last one.
I
Yeah.
can have one Thanksgiving as a treat. What else have we
Okay.
got to plug?
Jay, what do you got going on?
Yeah, streams. I think this week we're going to be starting our Twitch shenanigans. We're getting that kind of figured out. They're going to be a lot more kind of casual, kind of funky streams happening on Twitch only. So go, follow us over there. And also, I also have a Design Delve out this Friday, which is on the best multiplayer stealth horror game you're not playing. So come and check that out. It's just a positive video. Been on a bit of a negative streak, so going to be gushing about something I enjoy. And just stick about. And more Adventurers Now on Saturday. Always check that out. A wonderful show.
Yeah. Later today, 6 p.m. Central, Hidden Gems crew is going to be playing Beastie Balls, which is apparently volleyball Pokemon.
Ooh.
Oh, I was going to guess that it involves doing serious groinal harm to the Beastie Boys.
Oh, no. Not the Beastie Boys. They've endured so much. Let them enjoy their final Thanksgiving ever with the rest of us.
Okay. Well, I guess they have fought for their right to party.
They
did.
They really have. Tomorrow, Rewind is back at regular time. We'll be chatting about, we've been chatting about some big movies at the box office. They don't matter because we watched Hot Frosty. And we're going to be chatting about Hot Frosty. Number one movie on Netflix is Hot Frosty. And it's about a woman who puts a scarf on a snowman. And let me tell you, he becomes a hot dude. Oh, shenanigans ensue. Let me tell you. Number one movie on Netflix.
I just remembered.
Fucking roasted.
I remember one as well. Speaking of movies that usually aren't very good, an hour and a half, we have our Patreon movie night, correct?
Yeah, so patrons at the Phoenix tier. Eric said 30 minutes, but Eric doesn't know how time works. It's in an hour, 30 minutes at 3 p.m. Central. I'm sorry I said you don't know how time works, Eric. You're doing so much. You're so good. 3 p.m. Central, we'll be watching a movie called The Last Dragon, which is a Motown-produced kung fu movie. Nothing goes quite together like Motown and kung fu.
And that'll be with our top tier patrons who will be hanging out in a stream together, watching it, spoofing and goofing. It's always a great time. So.
Man, I'm really misremembering my dragon things today because I thought The Last Dragon was that film with Sean Connery playing a dragon.
Dragonheart.
Oh, okay.
You know what? Stick to Draken. You only care about dragons with big tits. If we don't got big tits, you don't even care.
Boy, wow. Where's this coming from?
I don't know. It's just sometimes fun to say tits with like a hard T. Yeah, now I know. Now I know why all you Brits do it. It's very fun.
But which T is hard?
You know what? I might start saying the C word.
Do it. It's a great word.
I'm not going to. It's scary. I'm not going to say that one.
Not.
Too scary.
No,
not going to say that one. And then, we should have normal Wednesday streams, Yahtzee tries. Maybe not. We're going to do something in the Firelink slot. Casey might not be here this week, and it's been a slow news week, so maybe we'll just stream something there. And then, obviously, no Thursday streams this week because of the holiday. But we'll be back next week. I promise.
Yeah, because we're slackers. One last super chat came in the last minute there. Sussygiro 2000 gives €2 and says, skill issue.
Straight up.
What do you think that was in relation to?
I've no idea.
Damn.
me signing off on a podcast. I'm
like
very
it.
bad at it.
I like it.
I started like 3 minutes ago. All right.
Isn't
I guess we'll see you all next time. Bye.
Bye, everyone.